This is the Padua Podcast Network.
Running Fever, episode 451, The Trail of Tears. Welcome to Running a Fever, the show about fitness, diet, and medicine, where my goal is to live a long, healthy, happy, active life right up to the very end. It's all about living long and loving life. Have you ever heard of the Trail of Tears? I've mentioned it a few times on the show, mainly because I see signs for it all around here, and the phrase is popular in the media. There are 2 state parks, a band, 3 albums, and 8 songs with the title. Apparently, this part of the country was right in its path, but I never really knew exactly what it was about, except vaguely that it had something to do with displacing Indians from their land. Well, I finally dug in and found some answers about the Trail of Tears, and I'm going to give you as much as I can today, though it will probably not be all you need to know. The Trail of Tears was the forced displacement of about 60,000 people of the 5 civilized tribes between 1830 and 1850, and the additional thousands of Native Americans and their black slaves within that were ethnically cleansed by the United States government. In 1830, the U.S. Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, which gave the president, who was Andrew Jackson at the time, the authority to exchange lands with the Indian nations, pay transportation costs, etc. It did not give Jackson, a man with a long-established reputation as an Indian fighter, the power to forcibly remove Indians from their land without a mutually agreed-upon treaty. Jackson had made Indian removal his top legislative priority upon assuming office, but his support for the removal began at least a decade earlier. Though ostensibly supported by treaties and legal land transactions, the removal was brutal and largely involuntary. The Creek and Seminoles went to war with the United States during this time period. The relocated peoples suffered from exposure, disease, and starvation while en route to their newly designed Indian Reserve. Thousands died from disease before reaching their destinations or shortly thereafter. The events have sometimes been referred to as death marches, in particular when referring to the Cherokee March across Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri in 1838. A variety of scholars have classified the Trail of Tears as an example of the genocide of Native Americans, others calling it ethnic cleansing. An estimated 8,000 to 10,000 Indians are believed to have died as a result of the forced marches, disease, starvation, and exposure, including 4,000 of the 16,000 Cherokees that were moved. The 5 tribes were Choctaw, Seminole, Creek, Chickasaw, and Cherokee. According to historian Daniel Feller, the Choctaws and Chickasaws had readily accepted and signed treaties with the United States government, while the Creeks did so under coercion. The initial legal basis for the Trail of Tears was the Treaty of New Echota of 1835, which was signed by a minority of Cherokees, not approved by the Cherokee National Council, nor was it signed by Principal Chief John Ross. In fact, most Cherokees opposed it, but the U.S. Senate approved it and began forcing Cherokees to leave Georgia and move 1,000 miles west to Oklahoma, starting in the winter of 1938. The Cherokee routes went through Tennessee, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Kentucky. There were 4 major routes of the march. 2 of them went through northwest Arkansas, where I live. One going right through Fayetteville, where the University of Arkansas is, winding up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. 2 more routes terminated in Arkansas, farther south, but still in the northwest quarter of the state. The northernmost route was called the Northern Route. It runs from Fort Cass, an internment camp for Cherokees in Charleston, Tennessee, near the border of Virginia and Georgia, through Nashville and into Kentucky, northwest through the southern tip of Illinois and into Missouri until reaching Massey Iron Works, then southwest into the northwest corner of Arkansas through Fayetteville to Westville on the border of Indian Territory, Oklahoma. The two southern routes were the Bell Route and the Water Route. The Bell Route was named after John Bell of the Treaty Party, who led the 660 Cherokee on the trail. It started at Fort Cass and ended at Evansville, Arkansas, which at the time was at the border of Indian Territory, now part of Oklahoma. The Water Route, or Drain Route, followed the Arkansas River, much of it close to the Bell Route, but on water instead of on land. It joins the Bell Route and ends up in Evansville as well. On the Water Route were 4 detachments that were particularly hard hit. 3,103 departed from Ross's Landing in Tennessee. Only 2,273 arrived at Mrs. Weber's plantation near present-day Stilwell, Oklahoma. It traveled the Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas rivers. The last detachment to take the water route was led by Cherokee Chief John Ross. Ross's Landing is now a park near Chattanooga. In between was the Bengie Route, named after Cherokee leader John Bengie, who escorted 1,079 Cherokee toward present-day Stilwell, Oklahoma. From Missouri, it goes southwest into Arkansas to Batesville, then west through Fayetteville and Evansville, and on to Stilwell. On the trails, the Cherokee faced many challenges. Close quarters and unsanitary conditions in detention camps and on the trail led to outbreaks of deadly disease like measles and dysentery. The Cherokee had meager rations and little opportunity to hunt or forage, while their meager supplies were often inadequate for the long journey, resulting in hunger and malnutrition. The travelers were exposed to the elements. The march was conducted during harsh weather, including freezing temperatures, blizzards, and heavy rains, especially when they were trapped between rivers during the winter. The prolonged forced march over the rough terrain, covering about 1,000 miles, was physically exhausting. If natural forces, hunger, disease, and exhaustion were not enough, you had the military's treatment of the Native Americans, which was brutal, involving forced roundups at gunpoint, confinement in unsanitary stockades, and a disregard for the elderly and the sick. Troops herded people into overcrowded camps where disease and harsh conditions killed thousands before the journey even began. The soldiers then escorted the detachments on their long, exhausting march to Indian Territory, a journey marked by extreme hunger, disease, and death. Families were separated, given little time to gather their belongings, and treated with little kindness despite warnings. On arrival in Indian Territory, present-day Tahlequah, Oklahoma, was established as the capital of Cherokee Nation, with John Ross as principal chief. He was to serve in that role from 1828 to 1866. Tahlequah was a symbol of hope. After the arduous journey, it represented a new beginning for the Cherokee people, where they could reestablish their government and continue building their society. Following the removal, the Cherokee Nation established the male and female seminaries in Tahlequah, demonstrating their commitment to education for rebuilding their community. After so much death along the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee population eventually rebounded, and today the Cherokees are the largest American Indian group in the United States. The Trail of Tears National Historic Trail, which is what I see signs for all around the area where I live, comprises 2,200 miles. It was authorized by federal law to mark the removal of 17 detachments of the Cherokee people. It goes through 9 states. I'm glad I live in a place with this historical significance. Otherwise, I probably would not have given this any thought. But now I know I can go myself and walk in the footsteps of Americans who suffered at the hands of their government, disrupting their lives and killing their family members, and suffered hunger, freezing temperatures without proper clothing, exposed to the elements. And I can keep this in mind, because it is important. It's important to see what hate can do if unchecked. We need to check ourselves as well, to make sure this doesn't happen here again. I feel for those displaced people and their suffering. Remember those who traveled the Trail of Tears. Well, as usual, I learned a lot just putting this episode together, and in the near future, I'm planning to walk some of the Trail of Tears and take you along with me. Until then, if you got the fever, keep it burning. If you don't, catch the fever, and I will talk to you next time on Running a Fever.